The yeas are 227 and the nays are 203. The conference report is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
But Speaker Paul Ryan's glee proved just a wee bit premature. After comfortably passing the House of Representatives, the controversial tax reforms then headed to the Senate, and they hit a bit of a snafu. Senators say that the bill still has some flaws, so they'll make changes before sending it back to the House to reconsider tomorrow. No. Donald Trump promised Americans the tax changes would be their Christmas gift from him. Will he still actually make good on that promise? Let's bring in the CBC's Keith Bogue, who's been watching this unfold today. Keith, so lots of people thinking this might be a legislative win for Trump if it happens. How did we get to this point?
Yeah, well, it didn't happen. At least it didn't happen today. And that's because what did happen is what you can expect to happen if you rush together a bill, have made all kinds of compromises, little notations in the margins, and you don't really know everything that's in it. The Senate parliamentarian made a ruling on the bill that there were 3 provisions in it that do not comply with Senate rules. They're not the kinds of things that can be allowed to be passed with just 51 votes, and the required 60 votes are votes that the Republicans don't have. So, long and short of it is, the bill has to be amended. And the same version has to go through the House. So even though the House passed a version today, they're going to have to meet again tomorrow and pass the amended version so that both of the Senate and House versions match, and the president can sign it, sometime in the near future, but possibly not tomorrow as he'd hoped.
Okay, so other than the promise of a Christmas gift, what's with the urgency in all this?
Well, the Trump administration and the Republicans don't really have a significant legislative achievement. You remember this year that they tried and failed repeatedly to repeal and replace Obamacare. That was an embarrassment. The tax reform or tax cut package was meant to rectify that, to give them something significant that they can say they accomplished this year, because next year we're going into an election year and they want something in the window. And they're going to get that. I mean, they do have the votes. This was an easier thing for them to deal with than healthcare was. But it should be pointed out that this is still an unpopular bill. What Republicans are hoping is that over time they can boost the popularity on it and make it something that they can really run hard on. But it's a very important thing. They've decided that they are better with it than without it in an election year where there's a lot on the line in the midterm elections in 2018. This is going to be the centerpiece of it. Yeah,
and you got to have some stuff to put in the window. Thanks for that, Keith. Appreciate it. The CBC's Keith Bogue in Washington. Donald Trump's tax revamp will mean permanent and massive tax cuts for large corporations, businesses, estates. But just how will a tax cut for the rich be sold as help for middle-class Americans? Here's a brief look at Trump's plan that he says will spark unprecedented economic growth.
These tax cuts are significant. There's never been tax cuts like what we're talking about.
And here's what that would look like. The corporate rate would be slashed from 35% to 21%. That's done by adding $1.4 trillion to the deficit over the next decade while axing social programs and health care. So how would that energize the economy? Republicans are selling it as trickle-down economics, a theory made popular in the 80s when you give the money back to those who pay the highest taxes. All that extra cash will slowly trickle down. Businesses will hire more workers and pay higher wages, and the wealthiest taxpayers will spend more.
We cannot delay in implementing an economic program aimed at both reducing tax rates to stimulate productivity and reducing the growth in government spending to reduce unemployment and inflation.
Republicans now credit so-called Reaganomics with sparking years of economic growth. But critics argue far from trickling down, income and wealth flow upstream, making the gap between the rich and the poor even greater.